Yo, what's up, everybody? We are here. We are going to be going over the regionals that just happened over in Portland. We're going to be looking at the decks for day one, the decks for day two, who made the top eight, what decks were played during the regionals, what percentages are, and trying working out what decks are doing really well at the minute and seeing which deck, trying to work out which deck is the best deck in format. So stick around, watch the video. Remember to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And let's get into it. So on day one of the Portland regionals, there was a total of 1,491 competitors. Now that is the most I believe they've ever had in a regionals. And the top five decks we will quickly just go over for day one. There was 256 of those players playing Charizard EX with the Pidgeot EX to search for any card, which is absolutely insane for this deck. Helps you search for things like Arven, the rare candies, lost cities. It helps you search for anything to get you out of that little tricky situation that you could be in, to get you through it. Now, 181 of those decks were Lost Zone Giratina V-Star decks. Now, I've seen some lists that have been playing it with Manaphy, without Manaphy, with one of counter catchers, two of counter catchers. There are so many different versions of this, but they're all around the same sort of mechanics. You get set up as quick as possible with your Tinas. And Tina's pretty much unstoppable at the minute. It's doing really well. And then in the third amount of used decks was the Miraidon EX. Now, this is, everybody knows I'm not a big fan of this deck. Yes, it's doing well. And fair play to the people who are doing well with it. But there was 155 competitors playing the Miraidon. With the Miraidon with Tandem Unit, it lets you get another Miraidon, your Mareeps, your Raikus, your Raichus. There's people are now playing it with Zapdos. Unfortunately, when rotation does hit, they are going to be losing the Fluffy, which without Dynamotor, it's going to make it very interesting to see what they replace it with. But we'll go over that in another video at some point. Fourth popular deck was the Gardevoir EX. Now, that has been doing absolutely fantastic since really it's been out. It's always in the top contenders of decks. Now, it's not doing winning, but it's always really high up, and I'm very surprised it hasn't done better than it has. With 148 players out of the 1,491. And in fourth place, the Inteleon VMAX was there with 117 people using that deck. Now, that deck done really well at one of the ICs or regionals, and I can't remember 100% what one it was now off the top of my head. It's just got a lot of moving parts, a lot of pinging, and with your likes of Metacham, it's also helping out a big deal. And then with 114 other decks were Lost Zone boxes. Now, it doesn't specify what versions. I'm guessing the majority of them have been your Sablezards, with potentially adding the Roaring Moon into it. Now, just those 5 decks, you are looking at 857 players out of the 1,491. Now, that's a massive number just playing your 5 top decks as it stands. That's 65% of the regionals all playing one of these 5 top. Now let's have a quick look at day two. There was a total of 151 people going through to day two. Now, we did lose 2 of the decks for this. We did lose the Miraidon deck. We also lost the Inteleon Urshifu deck for the top 5 decks of the day. Now, Charizard was sitting cute at 256 players. But then out of the 151 that went through, 25 made it through. Now that's still a big number, but the Lost Zone Tina V-Star deck absolutely flew away with this. It started with 181 players, and now it's there with 33 on day 2. That's still incredible. Gardevoir was 148 down to 15. Mew VMAX wasn't even in the top 5 of the top decks for day 1, and then it's the 4th one there today. Then you had your Lost Zone box, which went from 114 down to 13, and then Roaring Moon came in with 10 players playing it. Now that just in those 6 decks, I do apologize, previously I have been saying 5, but it is 6. Just with those 6 decks, that is 110 players. So that leaves 40 players playing other decks. So it's amazing to see how decks change. Now, if you go into the numbers a bit more percentage-wise, out of the 256 that were playing Charizard, that was 17%. Day 2, 16% is only losing 1%, whereas Tina was 12%, and it's now 21 in day 2. So it's gained a ridiculous amount of percentage for day 2. So it does show that Giratina is a lot more successful going forward to day 2. Now, we do get to see what made the top 8, and we will go over some of those decks shortly. But let's go take a look at the cards that made the top, or the decks, sorry, that made the top 8. Now let's take a look over our top 8 players of the day. We did say that in day 2, the top 6 decks, were, none of them were Miraidon. Now Miraidon was the 7th deck with 8 players out of the 151 making the top day 2s. Now Nicholas Moffett did finish the Swiss rounds in first place with Miraidon, with 12 wins, 2 losses and 1 tie. Now Madx Coran did come in second with 11 wins, 1 loss and 3 ties with an Arceus deck. Arceus was only 5 decks that went through to day 2. Now that Arceus is a Arceus V-Star with the Regigigas V-Star. In third place was Azul Garcia Grigo, who won the regionals beforehand with Charizard EX. Now I've seen the list and it is a different list to what he had the time before. We will go over the lists after this section. He did 11 wins, 1 loss, 3 ties. In fourth place was Ian Robb with Mew. Now we did say that Mew wasn't in the top 6 decks of day 1, but it did make the top 6 decks of day 2. With 14 players using Mew, Ian Robb and Madx Coran did make top 8 out of those 14 players. In 5th place was Sam Hu with Giratina V-Star. Now we did say Giratina did start on day 1 being the 2nd most popular deck, and then in day 2 it qualified for day 2, was the top most qualified deck. In the 6th place was John Eng as well. We did just say Maddox did qualify with the Mew out of the 14 players that played it. And then Gardevoir EX with Bod Robinson coming in at 8th place. Now Gardevoir there was 15 of those decks that made day 2, and he was obviously one of them, and he made the top 8 with it. Now I watched it live. It was the top 8 was fantastic. It was some good fun watching it, getting to see how the decks work a bit better with different people piloting them. And we will go over the results, who won, and we'll have a quick look at all of their decks now. Here we have our lists of the top trainers for the regionals at Portland. Now, John Eng did come through and win the regionals with his Tina Lost box. Samuel Howe came second. Third, Madx Coran. Fourth is Bod Robinson. Fifth was Nicholas Moffett. Sixth was Makani Tran. Seventh was Azul Garcia Grego. And eighth was Ian Robb. Now, we will go over these decks, but let's first have a quick look at all of the decks that were used in the regionals. Now, on day 2, this is 33 players played the Guillotine Lost Box, as we know. 25 played Charizard, 15 Guardy, 14 Mew. 8 of those were Mew Genesect and 6 were Fusion Mew. Now, we did see 14 Lost Boxes. 6 were Lost Box Paradox, 5 were Lost Zone Box, and 3 were Lost Zone Zard. Now, I'm not 100% sure what versions they are. We will glance over them shortly later. 6th was Roaring Moon, which I really wish was doing a lot better than it is. Maybe somewhere around the line, later down the line, we will see it coming a bit better. 7th was the Miraidon. 8th, we had 7 players playing Snorlax Stall, Blocklax, whatever you want to class it as. We also had 7 players going through with the Rapid Strike Inteleon. We had 5 players go through the day 2 with Arceus, and one of them did make the top 8. One was with Giratina, one was Superior, and I believe the other 3 were the Regigigas. We did have 3 players at Chimpao. Unfortunately, that has dropped down a lot compared to what it was. And then we got the 3 Golden Go. Don't get me started with Golden Go. I really want it to work. I really want to play it. But unfortunately, in my opinion, it just needs that little bit more of a push, a little bit more of a help. And then in 13th were 2 people making it through with Entei Iron Valiant, which was... It's always been something I personally believe to be a very early game, sort of. If it doesn't win early game, you are going to struggle a bit later down the line. But I don't play it enough to know it. But yeah, anyway, let's get down to the top 8 players. Now, Ian Robb was playing Mew Genesect. Now, if you look here, we have, let me see if I can just quickly move it over a little bit. There we go. You got the 4 Mews, the 3 Mew VMAX, the 4 Genesect. So this is the double turbo list without the Meloettas, but it is playing the 2 Fusion Strike Energy. Now, the only thing I can think that they're possibly playing that for is so that the double turbo doesn't take the 20 health away. It's so that they can still use the Genesects under Spiritomb and things like that. Obviously, it plays the Judge Pathline. It's got the 1 Elisa Sparkle for those Fusion Energy. Box of Disaster is a really good card in this deck. I did recently just find out. I did have to ask a couple of people because, again, I've not played Mew for a very long time. So I did have to ask sort of like, how does Mew beat Zard? And Judge Path does help a lot, but also I was told that the Box of Disaster is also an amazing card for it. It does put 8 damage counters onto a Pokemon when it knocks it out. So say you attach the Box of Disaster to the Genesect or the Mew V, it takes it out, which then does 250. Puts, say you're playing against Charizard, sorry, it does put Charizard down to 250 HP, which then is realistically in range of a Tempest Dive with copying Cross Fusion Strike onto the Genesect. With 210, with 2 Power Tablets, you are hitting those numbers. But he came in a solid 8th place with that deck. Now in 7th place was Azul Garcia Grego with a different Charizard list than what he did have at the previous regionals. Now he still plays the he did play 3 of Charmanders, but then he's changed from what it looks like 1 of the 70 HP Blaze and Destruction Charmanders for another 60 HP. For the 60 HP one with Heat Tackle, still uses the other 70 HP that does 40 damage. Plays one Charmeleon, 3 Charizard. It's the two Pidgeots with the Rotom, Luminion, Mew, Manaphy, Jirachi, and Manaphy and Jirachi are great bench stoppers to stop the people pinging the bench, lowering Charizard's HP, so that it is in range of one shots with your likes of Tina, your Miraidon decks, things like that, or your not Miraidon because that doesn't hit bench. Sorry, your Lost Box, things like that. He does play the 4 Arvin, which is great. It helps you get your Forest Seal Stone, helps you get your tool cards, your rare candies when you need them. It's got the 3 boss, 3 Iono, 1 research. It's got 2 super rods this time rather than the 1, because he now plays 1 level ball rather than 2, and he plays a switch card now, which I'm pretty certain that's probably for the likes of Block Lax. It's probably for when you need to retreat that card so that you can't take the one-hit knockouts. Maybe because it now plays a Technical Machine de-evolution, so you can switch out with a Charmander with the Technical Machine of de-evolution. Once you've hit a couple of things with Charizard, you can de-evolution things, take a few prizes by doing it that way. Now, the de-evolution is a great card to play with the Charizard mirror match. I personally have just added it into my list after seeing this. Don't know why I didn't think of it before. It is really good. You can hit a Charizard with Charizard, do a bit of damage, they'll switch it out maybe, or you can boss up another one, hit another one, and then you can use the de-evolution. That helps a massive amount, especially if you've got Lost City in play. You can then realistically Lost City 2 Charmanders and a Charmeleon in one turn, and you're just relying on 2 Charmanders and rare candies at that point. The counter catchers, obviously, if you do go behind, or Seal Stone can help you get to the Pidgeot, and so on, so on. Unfortunately, he didn't do too well in the top 8. He did come in at a solid 7th, but he's already got his World's Invite, and 7th is still a pretty good place. Makani Tran came in at 6th with an Arceus Regigigas deck. Now, you've got your Arceus for free, you've got your Bidoof, which is your standard cards with the Arceus. It does play 1 copy of Mew EX. You've got your Alakazam to move your damage around, your Spiritomb to help you with the likes of your Mew matchups. You got your Nestash to Nestash, then Industrious and Sizers. You got your Zacian, which is another great card, which will be rotating. Sad to see that go. But the Regigigas, during your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. Now, it does hit for 230, but if you use the V-Star power during your turn, if your opponent has exactly 1 prize card remaining, you may choose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. They discard the Pokemon on all attached cards. That can really help in a lot of the matchups. Now, this does hit for 230. Yes, it does say you can't use your turn next. But Angry Whack also does 100 plus 10 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon, but it does confuse the Pokemon. Hitting for 230 is also very good against the likes of Miraidon decks, especially with the Lost Vacuums, because that gets rid of all of that. You have your Box of Disaster to put on, I'm guessing, your Regigigas, because if you take a knockout with it, it gains 8 damage counters onto it, which then makes that do 180. That's my guess on the thing. Sharon's Care, which is also another great card, puts one of your normal Pokemon that has any damage counters on all attached into your hand. Now, 2 of those, Regigigas is sitting at 300 HP. It's going to take a lot to hit that. Giratina can't do it without using Star Requiem. So you can take a big hit, Sharon's Care it, do it all over again. But it does have the Zacian as well, which you can attach the energy with the Arceus's Trinity Nova. You can attach the energy onto Regigigas. It does play jet energies to jet things up. It does look like a fun list. Path to the Peak obviously does stop things like, once with Arceus decks, once you've Starbirthed, you don't massively need anything else. So Path does help stop Charizards from using their ability to attach the energy. It stops Miraidon from using its ability to get more Pokemon to the bench. It stops your Genesects. It stops Guardy attaching the energy to things. So I can see why people are playing this. It's definitely something that was being cooked in a very hot kitchen. But yeah, that did come in a solid 6th place. And then we had in 5th place was Nicholas Moffett with Miraidon. And as you can see, like they said, it does hit for 230, that Regigigas. So all of this is getting KO'd in one shot because they do not run any Bravery Charm in this deck. So you do have your tandem unit Miraidon to help you get your Raikou, your Mareep, your Raichu as well, your Tapu Koku, which is a new addition to this deck that I've been seeing. Your Zapdos, play Spiritomb to also help you not have to worry about your Muse. Electric Generator, now that's going to be extremely fun when the new set, I can't remember what set it comes out of, the trainer card, but it basically says put 2 cards to the top of your deck, I think, and you just put 2 energies onto it. Bam, Electric Generator. EXP Share is a good addition to this deck because it does mean that when a Pokemon is knocked out, you can move an energy from that Pokemon to the benched Pokemon. Well, sorry, the EXP Share has to be attached to another Pokemon. So if a Pokemon is knocked out, the energy does go from the active or whatever's knocked out to the one with the EXP Share on. So that's also another great addition. I'm guessing they're probably going to be putting it on the likes of Iron Hands to get that amp you very much off to take the extra prizing. Beach Court, because everything can then retreat a bit, except obviously your Zapdos, Fluffy, and Iron Hands, which does have a massive retreat. Now, Tapu Koku is a good card. If any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an attack during your opponent's last turn, this attack does 90 more damage, so that's already doing 120. And your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Ow, I just smashed my knee off the desk. So that is also a very good card, and I'm pretty sure that if you use Extreme Current, discard an energy from this Pokemon. Does that matter for this? No, it doesn't. Ignore me. Chatting rubbish. But still, you use that attack, you discard the energy, and you just fluffy it back on anyway. 13 energy with 1 double turbo is a big amount. I'm guessing the double turbo does help the Iron Hands quite a bit. But with your Zapdos, it does your basic Pokemon do 10 more damage. So realistically, if you put a double turbo on Iron Hands, it does take it down from 120 to 100. But with Zapdos on the bench, that does go back to 110. I've seen this deck, or I've seen Miraidon decks doing incredibly well lately. I've known people who've done cups and challenges in the UK who are flying with them. I remember at one point at the beginning of the season that Miraidon was just top everywhere. So that's going to be another interesting deck to think about once rotation happens. In 4th place, we do have a Bod Robinson with a Gardevoir. Now, I first started playing Gardevoir when it did come out, but people think it is quite an easy deck. Now, I personally think there's a lot more thinking to it than you realize. It's just, you got to be careful with your energy count, I believe. In my personal opinion, it is easy to be 1 energy short, and then you've attached all this energy for nothing. Now, it does play the Mirage Step Curlia, which it's going to lose. It's got 3 refinements, 2 Psychic Embrace, 2 Shining Arcanas. This one does still play the Zacian V. Now, I've seen a lot of the Guardy decks not play Zacian V anymore. It does have the new Scream Tail, which with Roaring Scream is really good. I have seen people playing Luxurious Cape in this deck to attach to Screamtail, to give it that extra bit of health, to do that extra bit more damage, and then Lost Vacuum it away so that the opponent can't take the extra prize in. Cresselia, Mew, Greninja, Manaphy, Jirachi, with all of the usual cards. It's got the 4 Onos, 1 Research Boss, 1 Worker, which helps you discard a Stadium, which I'm guessing is for things like your Path, or once you've collapsed Stadiumed, to discard a card that you don't necessarily need as much anymore. It's only playing 2 rare candies now, which I remember when it first came out, it was playing 3 or 4. But I'm guessing you want to use your Refinement Curlias a lot more now than you did. Countercatcher is another good one for this deck. The Reversal Energy is really good for the Shining Arcana, Gardevoir, to hit that extra damage later game. And again, with same with Screamtail, is really good for that. I do have a little soft spot for this deck. I did take it to EUIC last year. Unfortunately, I didn't do too well with it. It did go missing, but it is what it is. I wasn't doing great with it anyway. But it is such a good little deck. It's just, in my opinion, there's a lot of brain power. And I really wish it does do well at some point, at least win something. It did come second in Toronto. But I just want to see it win a regionals or an internationals or anything. It will be good day when that does happen. Now, over in 3rd place, we did have Madx Coran with the Meloetta version of Mew, which is another version I've seen. You've got your Mews, you've got your one Meloetta, 1 Ice Cube to help ping bench. You've got your 2 Elisa Sparkle, because this is the Fusion Strike build. And you've got your Power Tablets, your Cramomatics, your Featherball to help you get the Mews out. Your free Forest Seal Stones. Now, you got your free Forest Seal Stones. You do want to see them early game to help you get what you need. For example, say you need it to attach. You only play these and your Meloetta and Ice Cube. So you need them to get you, maybe at the beginning of the game, your Battle VIP Pass, your Elisa Sparkles, all of that stuff. It does play Choice Belt for your likes of your Giratina matchups. Box of Disaster helps against Charizard. So majority of the Mew decks are kind of similar, but with a couple of little changes. I've seen people playing it with Luxray, which does the, I believe it's 20 damage, but you can discard an item card from your opponent's hand. Now, if you're playing against Charizard, well, that's could be a very lethal card. Getting rid of the rare candies and stuff like that. Now, in 1st and 2nd was, 1st was Joe and 2nd was Samuel. How apologize if I've butchered any of your names. I am not very good at reading names. It was a very interesting final. The last match, now I'm not going to ruin it for anyone. I mean, obviously, you see here who wins. You probably already know who won anyway. But the last match, that was an incredible finish to the regionals. Now, Samuel's deck was one I was very intrigued in, because it doesn't play Manaphy or Jirachi or anything. And if you play Giratina, you're more than likely playing your Greninja with your water energies. So if you're playing it, surely you think, well, I'm playing it, so everyone else is going to be playing it. So you played a Manaphy. So this is a very brave move, in my opinion. But obviously it worked. It came second. So he plays the 4 Comfy, only the 1 Sableye, the 1 Cram. But he does the 4 Colruyt, 2 Boss, 2 Roxannes. He also plays the De-Evolution card, which, if you pair that right at the end of the game with the likes of Sableye or your Greninja, you can be taking some big knockouts with the De-Evolution card. Same with the Charizard deck, you are taking some big knockouts there. Yes, it might only be single prizes, but it's also helping you get rid of those Charizards, get rid of the Fluffies maybe, or the Tina Vs, It's still a two prizer, but you're hitting for 220 rather. You only have to do 220 rather than 280. Plays the 4 jet, 4 psychic, 3 grass, 2 water, which is your typical amount. Now both these decks in the finals both played Path to the Peak, which one's down, the rest are useless. So when you get them off of your Colruses or your Flower Selectings, it's an easy choice to get rid of. So that helped. In first place was John Eng, and you'll see the difference in the decks. He still plays the 4-3-3-1-1-1, but he plays a Manaphy. He doesn't play the de-evolution. He plays an extra water as well. It's a very similar deck. Now, if I get the two side by side as much as I can, let me see if I can do this. No. So this one is John Eng's. So it does the 4-3-3, 4-3-3, the 1-1-1 for the Greninja, Cramp, Sableye, but it also plays Manaphy. So it plays the 4 Colrus, 2 Boss, 2 Roxanne. That they're all exactly the same. The 4 Mirage Gates, the 4 VIP passes, the same. 3 Nestballs, 2 Pokegears, the same. 2 Super Rods, 2 Switch Carts, the same. 2 Escape Ropes, whereas John Eng plays the 1 Switch Cart, the 1 Counter Catchers, no de-evolution. And it plays 4 Path in Sam's, I think it's Sam. I apologize if I got that completely wrong. Yeah, Samuel's deck. Whereas John Eng here plays the 3 Path to make up for that extra water energy, so he can have 3 water energy rather than a 2. So again, these are very, very similar decks, whereas one plays Manaphy, one doesn't. One plays, so in essence, they've exchanged the Manaphy for the rope and a Path for a water energy. And you'd think that in a Lost Box deck, and a rope would be much more important, but then also a Manaphy is very important. It's really interesting to see how these players do play it out, and get it all to work. So with that being said, we did have a Giratina mirror match in Esque final, but in day 1 it's the second most popular deck, whereas in the regionals before, Azul won against a Giratina deck. So how can so much change in such little time? It's working out all of these little alleyways to get through decks. It's working out how to adapt to these decks. Like, for example, this regionals, we saw a lot of de-evolutions, whereas before I don't believe we did see many. But yeah, it was a very interesting regionals. Now don't forget, drop a comment and let me know what you think about the regionals just gone and these decks. What's your favorite deck at the moment? Are you going to be going to any regionals? I will be attending Liverpool regionals. I still am a little undecided on what deck I'm playing yet. The more I think about it, the more I change my mind. But yeah, congratulations to John Eng on winning Portland regionals, and you're getting your invite to Worlds. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to drop a like, drop a subscribe, hit that bell again, get the notifications, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace out.